was at the tail end of acting, directing, and so on. And my whole career, my working life has been split between active involvement in the theatre industry and some kind of social work. So after acting, directing, stage managing for many, many years, I became a social worker in Lambeth, then moving to Hammersmith in residential care. I then went back into theatre on the management side, working mainly with women's theatre companies, which I ran, but specifically with women in prison. So there's a lot of social justice involved in that as well. And as Rabbi Mark has mentioned, this all came together in a sense when I went to work for theatrical charities. I am now with the day job at Norwood as a major gifts fundraiser. And I've taken my theatre background there when I produced a film for them about two of the people we support there. Aside from that, going parallel and keeping my hand in with several theatre companies, I am consultant producer for Pascal Theatre Company, with whom I've worked for many, many years. Several years ago, Julia Pascal stumbled upon a place called Trent Park, part of Middlesex University. Trent Park was the HQ for captured Germans during the Second World War. And unbeknown to the captured Germans who were kept at Trent Park, the whole of the basement was taken over by British Secret Service, who installed listening and spying devices. So the whole place was rigged. They listened in to all the conversations that were going on among the Nazi elite at Trent Park, and everyone was translating, and it was going to London. Years later, Julia discovered this history and the role that some Jewish translators had played. And we took over Trent Park for the day, doing what's called a site-specific installation. And we brought to life everything that had happened in Trent Park. We had actors playing all different roles. You went down into the basement, you saw what had been going on in terms of the spying and the translating. And it was very beautifully and interestingly done. And many members of EDRS, as it then was, were part of that. And they walked around the site and around the building, hearing the history. So Julia Pascal has a bit of form with this kind of work, bringing history to life. Several years ago, she stumbled across the background to Rabbi Mark, in fact, the Novo Cemetery. It seemed to have attracted little attention. Ah, yes, lovely, thank you. Many of us know or don't know that Sephardi burial grounds always have stones that are flat. They're not raised, they're not upright like that, they're always flat, signifying that we are all equal in death. We are all level. This cemetery was the second cemetery. The first cemetery, which I've come on to, the Velho, was the first burial ground that the Sephardi Jews obtained. When that became full, they got another piece of land that you're looking at, the Novo Cemetery. And the Novo Cemetery, you can visit, you can wander in to this day. It is in the grounds of Queen Mary University, London. And in the cemetery, it's absolutely fascinating, I have to tell you. And this makes it look huge. It's very small. It's very domestic, actually. In the grounds are people like the famous boxer Daniel Mendoza. I mean, they've all got names like Herrera, Mendoza, the typically Spanish Iberian names. And Benjamin Disraeli, not Benjamin Disraeli, the grandfather to Benjamin Disraeli. So grandfather to the Prime Minister is buried there. So there are all around very, very interesting, aside from the actual raw history of the place. So Julia stumbled upon this and found it very interesting. She then started exploring Sephardi Jews and Jewish history in England and started tracing it. And what became evident was, going back a bit, most of us know that in 1290, the Jews were expelled from England under King Edward I. What is less well known is that the Jews have never been officially allowed back into England. It is a misconception that I, along with probably every school child ever, has, that the Jews were illegally allowed back into England under Oliver Cromwell. Not so. There's never been an act of parliament allowing this. So, hello, illegal immigrants, one and all. What can I say to us? The Jews trickled back in the 17th century under Cromwell. There were Ben Manasseh and various people petitioned him and petitioned Parliament, and there were discussions in Parliament, and there were bills put to Parliament, but nothing was ever passed. It's very interesting. So let's go back to the beginning. Jews came into England with William the Conqueror in 1066. There's evidence of that. They were then expelled in 1290. And there are records that reveal, that we've dug up, that English Jews scattered to France, to Portugal, to Spain. They lived quite peacefully in the Islamic Caliphate and the Iberian Peninsula until 1492, when the Catholic Spanish monarchy and the Inquisition ordered them to convert, face execution, or leave. That's pretty much what the choices were. Many went to Arab countries, where Islamic rule was tolerant of Jews. Others went to the Netherlands. And it was a Dutch Jew from the Netherlands who in the mid-17th century petitioned Oliver Cromwell to allow Jewish return. This was Manasseh ben Israel. Cromwell was quite keen for this to happen. Apparently, in order to fulfill the Christian apocalyptic prophecy, which required Jewish return as a prerequisite for the Second Coming. He approached Parliament to allow for the Jewish re-entry, which Parliament refused. And as I said to you, there was a bit of toing and froing. Despite this, Jews trickled in through the back door. And to escape punishment, they concealed their identities. There is actually a lot of renewed interest now in this wave of immigration. And there are suggestions that you're possibly well familiar with, that fish and chips was invented by Spanish Jews who fried their potatoes in olive oil rather than lard. And of course, fried fish, or cold fried fish, came over here from the Iberian shores to here. Some Spanish Jews, Portuguese Jews, pretended to be Spanish Catholics. And the secrecy of their return partly explains why their Sephardi heritage has been concealed for so long. Armed with all of this and what else we wanted to uncover, we wanted to interview Sephardi Jews in this country to hear their history. We wanted to dig deeper into the Novo Cemetery. We wanted to run workshops in schools and colleges and, as it turned out, resources for autism, where Oscar works. We wanted to disseminate all of this exciting, living history that we'd uncovered. We approached the Heritage Lottery Fund. Forgive me, it's now rebranded itself, but essentially it's HLF, it's Heritage Lottery Fund, and presented this to them. And we presented it as discovering and documenting England's lost Jews. And we proposed that this would be a 2-year project, which we would document in different areas that I've explained: the oral history, the the Novo Cemetery and so on. And we would put online as a resource that would be up for 5 years when the project ends. It's ongoing, it's not ended quite yet. And that was part of the deal. Anyway, we were successful with that, with the bid. We've been funded to do this, and we recruited the team. So this has all taken since October 2018, actually, and we kicked off in January 2019, and we're now July 2020. The project formally ends at the end of this year, early 2021. And I've been project managing it all along. So that kind of gives you the overall as to how it's come about. There's a very important element of this, which ties into the little story I told you at the beginning about the project Julia had done at Middlesex University, the secret listeners at Trent Park, listening into the Nazi conversations. And we decided to do another site-specific installation to bring history to life. And we were going to be at the Novo Cemetery this Sunday to bring to life the names on the stones, the histories of the people, background to the actual site, the burial ground itself. We were going to take over Queen Mary University, the ground floor, and there were going to be cookery demonstrations, there were going to be lectures, there was going to be Sephardi music, a lot of which was provided by my much beloved late husband, Rabbi Neil Kraft, who was involved at different stages. So this was going to be a vibrant, bring it to life history event. And then COVID hit. COVID hit in many ways. So what to do? We clearly couldn't do that. And what we decided was to make it an online resource. Before you run screaming for the hills in boredom, we have really brought it to life. We really, really have. And I'm going to post the link later so you can access it. We go live with this installation that isn't live, as it were, but it's still called One Lost Stone. We've put all of the research we did, all the vibrant background, exciting cultural differences, same things, history, music, it's all there in this link. The project itself has a link, and obviously I'll post that. So it's called The Lost Jews, and it's discovering it, because discovering and documenting England's lost Jews was just a wee bit of a mouthful for everyone to take. So when we finished, go have a look at the website where you can see the background to the project, where you can have a look at a video that's up there already, where you can find out, if you want to, how you can become involved. Just going to check, Rabbi Mark, how I'm doing for time. Fine, okay. So I just want to go through now the different strands of this project that we presented to Heritage Lottery Fund. One strand was the Novo Cemetery. That was the starting place. And very importantly and wonderfully, we tracked down the architect who won the tender to completely, this is probably the wrong word, forgive me, refurb the cemetery, which had fallen into disrepair. And also there were major issues for Queen Mary University and maintenance and so on. So he's a Jewish architect, Sephardi, has done a wonderful job, has done several years ago. And part of the video that you will see when you go to look at the link about this project is an interview with him. You can listen to him explaining what the challenges they faced were, in sensitively and delicately and mindful of, obviously, it's a burial ground, and equally obviously how important it is to all Jews specifically Sephardi Jews. So with that in mind, I hope you will find that quite interesting. So that was a major strand. We realized early on that tying Sephardi and English history and disentangling and finding out how they weave in and out was terribly important, and how to explain that. We also engaged with Bevis Mark's synagogue, which was tremendously helpful, and realized how ignorant most of us on the project, are Ashkenazi Jews. Two are Sephardi, but they're Mizrahi. They're via, one's via Cairo and one is via Israel. So it's very different to the Spanish-Portuguese Sephardi experience. And those, as I say, who are Ashkenazi, it's been very enlightening along the way, delightfully so. So, Bevis Marks, January, February 2019, we held workshops. And we held workshops that explored how Jews and why Sephardi Jews left Spain and Portugal and travelled to England, and what happened when they got to England, how they had to hide, the few artifacts they might have brought with them, the little they knew, many of them, about their heritage, actually, and how very important it was to have a burial place. That came over loud and clear. So we explored that. We did the workshops taken by the education director. The age range was from 7 to 80 of participants. People from EHRS participated, people from all over, different backgrounds. It was very exciting and energizing. So out of those workshops, we came to EHRS. We took workshops with our own young people in a different way. I'll come on to that in a minute. And in fact, we've done workshops, it's spread across schools and colleges with autistic children and young people. That's been very successful. And that has its own link on the website. You can see the education work we've done. You might have to pretend you're 7 years old to participate in some of the activities, but I think you might enjoy those as well. Alongside that, kind of parallel, but went off ahead of it, was the oral history. The oral history, we realized, was essential to speak to people of Spanish, Portuguese, and Sephardi background and heritage about their history, their family culture, their background. What did they eat that's different to what Ashkenazi Jews eat? What's the music? What are the special customs? What can they remember from their parents or grandparents? What was handed down? All of that's been recorded, but not just written. We've got people who are happy to be interviewed and videoed. And that's where our young people, going back to that, EHRS, learned the skills of being interviewers. And they carried out some of our interviews. They had to learn how to interview, how to note down, how to be accurate, how to be sensitive in asking some questions. They had their set list of questions. They had training how to do this. So with Marion Cohen and Rabbi Emily, we helped set that up. So that's another strand that happened. Alongside all of that going on was the preparation for this site-specific installation, One Lost Stone, as it's called, that is now not live. This is what I explained before, that it's now become an online resource. So a lot of preparation went into that. So when you look at the video, you will see actors performing because they were exploring what is it like to have to leave the country, your country of birth. What is it like to have to disappear in the middle of the night, to conceal yourself, to land in a new country and conceal your true identity all over again. What is that like? So that you can see as well. And we decided to leave that up because it was an important part of all the research that went on. At the same time, at a different burrowing away underground all the time, were a little army of volunteers who did research at the British Museum, the British Library, Bevis Marks, Sephardi Library, really, really investigating as much as can be, as far as we could get, with Sephardi texts, really hundreds of years old, and what we could learn from different stories. So what Julia uncovered was actually one of the really interesting things that emerged from the whole project were the missing stories. We know a lot about Daniel Mendoza. We know a lot about Benjamin Disraeli's forebears. We know a lot about many prominent, wonderful Sephardi Jews. More hidden, or totally hidden, and less represented, if at all, are the women, the female Sephardi. And we had to dig pretty deep. There are some very interesting ones. I'll tell you briefly about one. There was somebody, so there was a woman called Muriel, known as Muriel of Oxford. That's all we know about her in the Journal of Medieval History. Muriel of Oxford, her husband David wanted to divorce her because she couldn't produce a living child. And the rabbinic court granted him the divorce. No, sorry, he demanded intervention by the royal court, which granted his divorce and superseded the rabbinic court. That is what happened. So he got divorced. He married someone called the fabulously named Licoricia, like licorice, of Winchester, who became a hugely important moneylender after David's death. She was totally dynamic, a very powerful public figure, and she had a very prominent position in the secular world. She was very, very important. There was, we also had Amelia Persona. Amelia Persona came from a Sephardi background, of Venetian heritage, and her father played at King Henry VIII's court, so predating Oliver Cromwell. Some of you might have seen a play called Amelia, written by Morgan Lloyd Malcolm, which was at the Globe Theatre in the West End in 2017. It was well received. The playwright's father, Morgan's father, who was Jewish, had been an actor. And the playwright dug down into this woman, Amelia Persona. Her father had been an actor. And this woman, it turns out, was most likely Shakespeare's lover and possibly his occasional co-writer. And for any of you who are Shakespearean aficionados, the unusual name of Amelia occurs in several of Shakespeare's plays. We don't know, but we do know, we don't know that for a fact, we do know that she was the first English woman to identify herself as a professional poet in 1611. And in her volume, Hail God, King of the Jews, Eve's apology refuses to damn Eve for provoking the fall. And Persano proclaims that Adam is the sinner, not Eve. And in her stunning punchline, she declares that men's superior knowledge has been stolen from women. These are two lines. Yet men will boast of knowledge which he took from Eve's fair hand as from a learned book. An interesting twist. Keeping with the theatrical theme, there was another famous but unknown now stage name, Hannah Norsa. She was born in the early 18th century. Her mother is believed to have been Esther de Aharon de Chaus, who married a Sephardi Jew at Bevis Mark Synagogue. And Hannah Norsa claims to have been the first Jewish actress to appear on the English stage, starring as Polly Peachum in Gay's The Beggar's Opera at the Covent Garden Theatre. She took many leading roles, plays by Farquhar and Otway and so on. She became the mistress of Robert Walpole, Earl of Orford, and lived with him, and was known as a very agreeable woman and was known to be Jewish. However, when she died, she was buried at St Mary Abbots, Kensington. She left £4,300 invested in Treasury stock, and there are engravings and prints of her at the British Museum and the National Portrait Gallery. You would have to really dig deep to find these people, these women. They are not around. Let me just, sorry, I don't want to overrun. Have I got a bit longer, Mark? Got 5-10 minutes more? Yeah, good. Okay, so another one is Ida Romanzinin. She was another Sephardi woman within the arts, and she performed from the age of 4. And there are images of her in different plays. Although she worked under the name of Maria Bland, not Ida Romanzinin, she was baptized, but her Jewish appearance was mocked and satirized in stories of her sewing in front of her window each Saturday in the presence of a pig. So these lives of Bassano, Nursa and Bland are clearly far from the norms of traditional Orthodox Sephardi society. There was another, and I'll end on this bit, I'll end this bit. There was another very interesting woman, Maria de Carvajal, forgive my pronunciation. She was the widow of Antonio Fernandez de Carvajal. He was a very, very prominent Jew in Cromwell's Republic. When the Jews were threatened with re-expulsion after Cromwell's death, which they were, Maria called a meeting at her house in Leadenhall Street in Aldgate. Now, to this day, a woman's voice is not allowed to be heard sung during Bevis Mark's synagogue services, but in the 17th century, it had no political heft. So in the mid-17th century, Maria petitioned Charles II, pleading for His Majesty's protection for the Jews to remain here in England. And she was supported by the Sephardi male establishment and heard by the king. So these are some of the lost stories within the lost Jews, if you like. These are the ones we uncovered in the time that we've had. So Sephardi Jews arrived in England carrying family memories of denunciation, auto da fe, torture, burning at the stake. Unsurprisingly, their tactics, their survival tactics, were to keep a low profile. Of course, it's sad that many of the women's experiences are lost, and mainly it's the successful men who dominate the history, but we've been uncovering them. What I suppose is important to say, that it's not the Jews that were lost, but a British history, which it would appear to us, chose to lose them from the pages of the Book of National Identity. Our work with the project is an attempt to reveal the importance of Jewish life in Britain and to place the Jew within the mainstream so that the story is not erased from history. I'm just doing a quick check on time. I've pretty much covered the main areas. Let me just see if I've left anything out. I'm sure I feel I've been talking at you, and I hope you are happy to talk back at me and ask questions, which I'm more than happy to try and intelligently answer. Let me update you before I finish on what we have to do next. All of the strands that I've told you about, the installation, the history, the oral histories now, which are all written up and which you can actually see online, the education work, One Lost Stone, unveiled this coming Sunday. All of these strands are now being pulled together. They will eventually be put together in an ebook, which pretty much looks like the website. It's just we're firming it, tightening it all up. And we can constantly add to this. It's a living, breathing project. That was always the aim of it, not that it should be lost in English history in the British Library somewhere, but to bring out to the light so that it can start blossoming and blooming. Much is known of our Ashkenazi heritage and history. For reasons that we all understand, not just us doing the project, the early Sephardi Jews coming into this country were very careful what they allowed society to know about them. It's entirely understandable, of course, what they chose to conceal, what they chose to reveal. And we have enjoyed getting to know our very close Sephardi brothers and sisters, I have to say, having felt so long that it's almost like they're Sephardi, we're Ashkenazi, different customs. They have rice. They have rice at Pesach. We don't do rice at Pesach. All of that. So it's been a real journey for all of us involved on the project. I'm very excited about it. And I'm so pleased, I cannot tell you, that when I was speaking to Rabbi Mark and discussing, what do you think? This might work? Anyone might be interested in knowing about this. He said, yes, do this. This is great. We can make, come and tell us about it. And there may well be people who want to ask questions and so on. And Rabbi Mark, you'll have to tell me the best way to send over this link, because I think that's really important, that you actually now can go away and say, click the link and have a real look and poke around and rummage in all the work we've been doing. Thank you. That's it.
Susannah, thank you so much. Now then, one of the ways we can do that is to bring that website up onto the screen for everybody. Let's see if it works. It should do. So here we go, and it's called Share Screen. So what I'm going to do is see if we can get this to work. Should do. Share screen. There we go. And there is the website. Okay. So hopefully we can all see this. Yep, fine. This is the website that Susannah's speaking about, and you'll see at the top it says, right, it's got all sorts of clever features. You can see it pop up. lostjews.org.uk. So www.lostjews.org.uk. So whatever I do with this, I can probably show you a little bit down the website itself and what it tells you about. And you can see it has resources, education resources. It has all sorts of information about Sephardi Jews and tells you an awful lot more about people. So there's that just to show you. So,
Rabbi Mark, do you want to, you've come out of it. I was going to say, do you want to show a little bit of the video? Because I think that will whet the appetite.
I can try it. What I've tended to find is when I try and do that, it ruins the whole thing, but we'll see how we go.
Oh, no, we don't want to. We don't want to do that. Right, then that's great. That means everyone watching has got to now go and do that.
That's right. Actually, thinking about it, I think I do know how to do it now, because luckily, like you have a clever son who knows how to do these things, I do have a daughter who did tell me how to do this.
Yeah, I can't do it unless I have the clever son with me. Forget it.
But I'm not sure it's going to come up. Oh, no, it might do. There we go. Is that your video?
Yeah.
Of which you
Not at the beginning, though. I don't think it's the beginning. Is it the beginning?
Let's see.
I wouldn't bother, Rabbi Mark. I think it's going to...
Right. Okay. There we go. So there's the requirement. Go and have a look for yourselves.
Yeah.
www.lostjews.org.uk. Lovely. What I'd love to do now is just to say, first of all, saying thank you so much to Susannah for getting us started and enabling us to learn about this. So for everybody here, if you have a question for Susannah, please do put it. I have a couple that I will chuck in. If we can't get people started, I'm sure we will be able to. So any questions you might have about what Susannah's been speaking about. And Brian, please start us off. You can probably see Brian down the bottom there. Susannah?
I've only got a very few people that I can see.
I'll tell you what I'll do. I will stick Brian in front of you. There we go.
Oh, thanks, Brian.
And then I'll go through everybody as we see people, and I can see a couple of other people who have their hands up. So off you go, Brian.
I think we'll certainly look at the website. But just you started off by mentioning Trent Park. Sorry, why did you mention Trent Park?
Because we brought history to life at Trent Park by reenacting, using original stories and history that we had dug up through our research, and using actors. We took people through what had happened at Trent Park. So we used the same blueprint to do One Lost Stone, to bring this history to life and living. I mean, of course, Sephardi Jews are alive and living, but the past history as well.
Okay, but the other thing about Trent Park, wasn't that the M Room, that with a book written by Helen Fry? The M Room was Trent Park, wasn't it?
I think it was, yes.
Lovely. Thank you. Let's now go to Miriam Selwyn. Miriam, you had a question. I'm just going to see if I can find you. Oh, you're being a little bit
I'm here.
Invisible but hearable. Please, Miriam.
Yeah, I look like a garden. That's my family history. Sorry, that's about Melbourne, Australia. That was a special place for one person who survived against the odds in the family. So thank you very much. That's absolutely riveting. And as you say, it's about time that we had much more higher profile. I mean, documentaries I'm thinking of, on TV and Netflix and all of this. Is there any way you can do all of that? I've got a couple of things. Don't cut me.
Is there any way we can?
You can, get documentaries made. I mean, people must know people. So it's so exciting and so interesting. I mean, it's so rich and
yes.
Amazing, incredible. Wow, what a fantastic thing to just uncover, just literally stumble upon.
Well, we're sending out the link after the 5th of July, when there's the big unveiling of the installation on 5th of July. We've got some contacts at the BBC, so we're hoping someone will pick it up. So yes,
that's great.
Watch this space.
Well, perfect. No, you deserve it, but we all do. We Jews need to pat ourselves on the back and feel better about ourselves. It's about time. The other thing was, when you mentioned Bland and the pig, what came to mind was Beatrix Potter's Piglet Bland. I was wondering from that, But anyway, it's just a tiny one. But the richness and Shakespeare and all of that, yes, it's time that was. And also put on their Globe website. And, we need to raise our profile.
Yes.
And if Adele says, if I'm not for me and all the rest of it, and if not now, when, so I think that's your role. Thank you very much. That's tremendous.
Thank you,
No
Miriam.
pressure on me then. Thank you.
Thank you. So
Everybody,
I can see we have Keith has his hand up, and also Stephen. So I'm going to ask Stephen first and then Keith, so we'll go into strictly in order. And Jeff also does. So Keith, Stephen and then Jeff. So that's Jeff Bard. So let's go to Stephen first, please, because you was first.
But without trying to show off, I did know that when Manasseh ben Israel went to Oliver Cromwell, there was no act for the return of the Jews, which was to our advantage, because when Charles II returned, all those enactments that went through during the period of when Oliver Cromwell was in power were reversed. So is that the reason why Susannah was mentioned about trying to get the Jews excommunicated for the second time? I mean, if it had been passed, it would just, if you reversed the enactment, they would have to go. Is that the reason? You know what I'm saying?
You're absolutely. I mean, it is true. Yes, that this is the whole crux of the matter. That the Jews trickled back There's never been, under Cromwell, there's never been an act of Parliament reversing the expulsion. That's
because
an
there's
important part.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch what you said, Stephen.
Enactment. You don't have to reverse it because it was never enacted in the first place. If it had gone through Parliament, then
No. The Jews were expelled in 1290.
Yeah, no, but the Jews were expelled in 1290. But Manasseh ben Israel petitioned Cromwell for the Sephardic Jews to be readmitted, but that never went through Parliament. That's what I'm saying. So,
Yes, and the point is you have to go further back to realise when the Jews were expelled under King Edward I in 1290, that's never been reversed. That expulsion.
Oh, right.
That's right. So we're living on borrowed time. So
Correct.
Keith, could I bring you in, please, with your question or comment?
Thank you, Mark. Just a little bit of background, if I may, Susannah. I was a student at Queen Mary College, as it was then, part of University London, from 1966 to 1969. And having been accepted for a place, I arrived one September morning on the first day to find that a brand new law faculty had been built. And it had been built with this amazing outlook of a cemetery behind it. And that was the cemetery that we are talking about. And Queen Mary College, at the time when they wanted to build the new law faculty, could only go so far to the boundary of the cemetery. In turn, that created a considerable amount of discussion, certainly during the 3 years that I was there, that the college wanted to take the land of the cemetery. And that promoted discussion as to whether an act of Parliament was required to excavate the graves, to rebury, as it were, reinter and reconsecrate other land. I'm interested that you say that you can now visit the cemetery, because at the time, I and several other of my colleagues who were Jewish and part of the Jewish Society, which I ran, were told you could not go there. It was closed. However, we did get permission to go in. And I do remember on one occasion going round the cemetery and indeed seeing graves that you mentioned, such as Daniel Mendoza and Benjamin Disraeli Senior, as it were. But I'm interested that whatever did happen or proposed to happen never did happen, and that cemetery is still there, and that you can go round. Is it generally open, or is it open by appointment? How can you deal with that?
I don't know what it looked like when you were there, and may I say, you wear your years very lightly, Keith. 1960s indeed. There is no gate, Keith. There's no gate. So when I say you can just walk in, there's no gate. It's never closed, seriously, never closed. So you walk in this, round the side of this modern building, and suddenly you're in front of a cemetery. I think a lot of this work was done by this very clever architect I mentioned. But something happened between the 1960s then and this architect firm, 2000 whatever, I don't know. Don't ask me about the dates they did it. So there was what happened in that bulk of time. My understanding is that I'm pretty sure Bevis Marks or people at Bevis Marks are involved in the say-so of what can happen. And they're pretty tough to get past.
Thank you, Susannah. Let me move on to Jeff Bard.
Well, strangely enough, I'm going to continue with what Keith said. We've got more in common than you know. Keith and I went to Christ College together. I didn't know you went to Queen Mary College because I was there as well in the 1950s. And we knew about this cemetery, and we were told at the time that it was going to be closed and destroyed and all the graves taken elsewhere, unless people visited the graves. And this small Jewish group society we had there, we took it upon us, and most of us went there just to visit the cemetery and just to keep it open, because nobody had living descendants who were still visiting the graves. And it was just one of these things that you did. You wandered in, you put your kippah on, and you walked around the graves and you left again. I'm delighted it's still going. Just to add a little bit to the story for you, Susannah. Thank you so much.
That's lovely. And you don't look a day over blue either.
Well, when we can, it sounds to me like there's an EHRS coach trip to be done here.
It's interesting, Rabbi Mark. Seriously is. It's really worth going to.
And it's an interesting part of East London that, you know, generally you don't do on tours of East London. And I suspect that's also because of us just being so aware of the Ashkenazi heritage and so unaware of the Sephardi heritage, apart from Bevis marks, which we sort of imagine is the last thing there. I'm just going to just see if there's anybody else who has a question or comment. So Andy, Andy, Les and Stuart. Andy, Les and Stuart. Let's start with Andy.
First of all, thank you so much, Susannah. It was great. I was part of the group that took the children down to Bevis Marks.
And indeed.
It was really, really interesting. The kids loved it. My question is, how did you discover these women who were involved, but nobody's ever heard of them, or, you know, doesn't know?
They're not widely known, yeah. Julia Pascal is always, everything she does, she's on a mission to uncover the women's stories. Where are they in history? That is the answer, Andy.
Okay.
And she always does. And so we had a team of researchers researching, and she had already got some leads. That's how we uncovered them. Yeah.
Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating.
Thank you. I'm now going to find Les and bring him forward. Just a moment, Les. Where are you? There you are. Right. Great. Please unmute yourself and let's hear from you. Les, you need to unmute yourself. Les. Which I can't do, I'm afraid.
Les, you have to unmute.
Hear you.
We can't hear you. You need to unmute yourself. Oh,
can you see me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead, Les.
Okay. Almost certainly following the expulsion from Edward the First time, several Jews or some Jews did remain in England, secretly financing the monarchy. Cromwell didn't stop Jews coming in simply because the country was basically bankrupt. He viewed the entrepreneurial and financial astuteness of the Sephardi Jews who were in Holland, having come initially from Spain when Holland was a Spanish protectorate. And that was one of the main reasons that he allowed them to remain.
Yes, I mean, I think, and yes, Les, I think one of the issues that we wanted to address, and I don't quite know how we get into the education establishment, but I, along with many others, I was taught that Cromwell allowed the Jews back in because of the money to get taxes. I think that is now I realise that is a very simplistic statement and untrue. Undoubtedly, that was part of it. He was a shrewd operator, Cromwell. But I do think there were other matters going on as well, such as allowing Jews back in to fulfill the second coming, all of that.
Thank you. I'm just going to find Stuart for his comment and Ruth in a moment. So let's just find Stuart. Where are you? Yeah, there he is. Right, there we go.
Hello there. Three quickies. First of all, Rabbi Mark did the introduction about the theatre for you, praising your great activity. I think what was omitted was your influence in the Yiddish theatre, which I heard you talk previously about that, and I think it should not be omitted from the contribution of part of your CV. Secondly, there is a bit of a misnomer amongst a lot of people about the Spanish and Portuguese people coming to England under Cromwell. A lot of people think they came direct. Of course, none of them came direct. They all came via Holland. Yeah. And it was the representation, was it to Ben Manasseh, that they came here. And thirdly, what is also unknown, there was a Sephardi community in what is now known as the Republic of Ireland, the south of Ireland, between 1500 and about 1700. There were mainly Portuguese fishermen. They weren't so much Spanish, they were Portuguese. Unfortunately, the community got wiped out. But it's only by going on a cruise and going on a tour that we would discover that in Ireland there is, in the museum and the burial ground, recognition of these Portuguese Sephardim who landed in the south of Ireland for 2 centuries.
That is so interesting. I had no idea. I have to let Julia know that. Interestingly, I had a connection. We were trying to get oral histories, and I had a connection over in Ireland, and it didn't go anywhere. We would have loved to have tracked down Sephardim in Ireland, and it just reached a dead end there. I wonder, that's interesting.
So Ruth, this is our last question or comment, because we're just about to hit the buttons on time. But Ruth, if you could please ask or comment as you wish.
Thanks. Just want to say thank you very much to both of you. It's been really interesting. I was just wondering, how many graves are there actually in the cemetery? You said it's very small.
I don't want to lie. I haven't got a number to give you, Ruth. It's online, I'm sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I honestly don't know how many there are. I do know some were exhumed. I don't have that figure. I'm not going to try and find it.
No problem. Thank you.
I suppose one of the answers is quite a lot from what you can see from this picture. Don't know how helpful that is. I'm so sorry that we need to finish as we got to 3 o'clock, because I think one of the things with our online talks of the week is that we meet the start and end time. I just want to say to Susannah, from all of us, both here on Zoom and also those who've joined us on our live stream, thank you so much. Thank you so much for teaching us, for letting us into yet another element of you. And as Stuart says, there are many more unburied. There are many more depths to you as well that we'll re-uncover for the synagogue. We really appreciate it, and Susannah, I hope we can do this again and follow you in this project. So just remember, if you want to see it, all you need to do is to go here, which is lostjews.org.uk. lostjews.org.uk. We've taken a bit of a recording of what we've just been doing, so that if you would like to see this online, if that's okay with you, Susannah, we'll keep a recording, if that's okay to share that.
Absolutely.
And one of the wonderful things is, look at this picture. This is EHRS, isn't it? Or is this HRS? Because that is Lawrence Steen, presumably with a group of children on this chance on the picture.
There are lots of them in the pictures on the website as well.
Absolutely, right. Susannah, thank you so much, and let's all we can all do at least a clap and also let me please unmute yourselves and be right with people and say goodbye and thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Susannah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Bye.
Bye. And I keep the video running a little bit, which we need to, so that the live stream catches up and the people watching us there don't suddenly get it cut off halfway through. So that's why the video is still running. So I'm going to sit here saying meaningless things for a couple of minutes to make sure that we don't cut everybody else off, which otherwise we would do, as I check where we are on my phone, which enables me to know, has the live stream caught up with with the end of the talk, which it probably has. We'll have a look. ehrs.uk, and now we check the live stream, and the live stream is at the moment at the point where we're all clapping and saying hello and well done. So that's brilliant, which now means we can turn this off and you can go make yourself a cup of tea. Thank you so much, Susannah. Goodbye. Shabbat shalom.
Thank you. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. Bye.